Thank you, Shilling. We got up a couple of slides here just to give you a brief overview of the financial statements, financial situation for ACE, the Holly Street Advocacy Centre for the Elderly, Inc., as at the year end of March 31st, 2024. I'm pleased to present my report on the audited financial statements. I gotta put my glasses on, sorry. Of the Holly Street Advocacy Centre for the Elderly for the year ended March 31, 2024. The audit was performed by Hilborn LLP, Chartered Professional Accountants and Licensed Public Accountants. They issued their independent audit report stating, and I'll just quote from the opinion, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the organization as at March 31, 2024, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So in the layperson's vernacular, it's a clean audit, okay? And that is the opinion that the auditors always give when there's a clean audit with no issues or problems or concerns. So within the audited financial statements is the statement of financial position, which I'll just report on in summary, and we have the slide up here. In summary, as reported on the statement of financial position for the year ended March 31, 2024, ACE had total assets of $745,893. Total liabilities were $2,761, and the funds balance was $743,132. As reported on the statement of operations and funds balance, total revenues for the year ended March 31, 2024 were $1,624,324, and total expenses were $1,636,794 for an operating deficit of $12,470. Legal Aid Ontario provided 96% of the annual funding for operations. Salaries and benefits were $1,225,563, or 75% of the total expenses for the year. And accommodation expenses, that's basically the rent and for the office, were $164,635, or 10% of the total expenses. Then moving to the statement of cash flows, it indicates that ACE has a solid cash position with cash at the year end of $51,981. You'll notice there's a significant difference between the 2024 and 2023 figures. The significant difference between the cash at year ended March 31, 2024 and the end of the prior year is due to the inclusion in the 2023 statement of funds received, funds received from Legal Aid Ontario for the renovation of the new office space here at 55 University, which funds were spent during 2023 and 2024. So with that background, I move as follows. I think we have the motions. Yeah, right. Yep. So I move as follows. Be it hereby resolved, receive and approve the adoption of the financial accounts for the year ending March 31, 2024, as audited by Hilborn LLP. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Matthew Furrow, seconding.
With the consent of the chair, I now open the meeting for discussion of the motion, if any. With the consent of the chair, I will now ask for a vote by voicing yea or nay by members of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly who are entitled to vote today. All in favor, please say yea. All against, please say nay. With the consent of the chair, I declare the motion carried. The next item of business is a resolution to approve appointing auditors for the next fiscal year. And I move as follows. Be it hereby resolved that Hilborn LLP or such other auditors as may be recommended by resolution of the ACE Board of Directors be appointed auditors for ACE for the fiscal year of April 1, 2024 to March 31, 2025. Will someone please second the motion?
Matthew Furrow, seconding.
With the consent of the chair, I now open the meeting for discussion of the resolution, if any. With the consent of the chair, I will now ask for a vote by voicing yea or nay by members of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly who are entitled to vote today. All in favor, please say yea. All against, please say nay. And with the consent of the chair, I declare the resolution carried. Bring it back over to our chair.
Luckily, we're using different color highlighting. Otherwise, who knows what chaos could happen. Okay, thank you, Tom. All righty. I will now call on ACE member Dominica Ozarko to present our fourth item of business, which is a resolution to approve the prior activities of the year.
Okay. I move as follows. Be it hereby resolved that all acts, contracts, bylaws, proceedings, appointments, and payments enacted, made, done, and taken by the directors and officers of the corporation since the date of the last annual general meeting, October 24, 2023, as the same are set out or referred to in the minutes of the meeting of the Board of Directors or in the financial statements submitted to this meeting, be and the same are hereby approved, ratified, and confirmed. Will someone please second the motion?
Carol Cohen, seconding the motion.
With the consent of the chair, I will now open the meeting for discussion of the resolution, if any. With the consent of the chair, I will now ask for a vote by voicing yea or nay by members of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly who are entitled to vote today. All in favor, please say yea. Yea. All against, please say nay. With the consent of the chair, I declare the resolution carried.
Thank you, Dom. I will now call on ACE board member Alexander Henderson to present our fifth item of business, which is a resolution to approve amendments to our general governing bylaw, bylaw number 1.
Okay, I have my script here. In accordance with the Non-for-Profit Corporations Act, better known as ONCA, which came into effect October 2024, the ACE Board of Directors reviewed and revised and provisionally approved and revised the ACE General Governing Bylaw number 1 as distributed this evening, subject to the approval at this annual meeting of the members. Oh, okay, thank you. You weren't missing much anyway. The revised bylaw incorporates the following changes designated to modernize our governance structure and bring it into full compliance with the Act. changing the number of directors from 13 to a minimum of 8 to a maximum of 15 directors, incorporating general neutral language, providing for the recording of dissenting directors' vote in accordance with the Act, updating language concerning meetings held by electronic means in accordance with the Act, broadening the scope of the directors' prohibited conflicts of interest to include conflicts by a spouse, partner, or other immediate family member of any director. Providing that an employee of the center or a spouse, partner, or other immediate family member of an employee of the center is not eligible for election to the board of directors, changing the offices of president and vice president to chair and vice chair in accordance with the Act, providing for the election of 1 or 2 vice chairs in place of a first and second vice president, changing the threshold for signing checks by the treasurer from $500 to $2,500 in accordance with our recently revised financial policy, authorizing contracts and other documents to be signed by the executive director on behalf of the center in accordance with our long-established practice, providing that any individual who is supportive of the mission, mandate, and work of the center, who is not in conflict of interest with the center and does not have any outstanding complaint or legal proceeding against or involving the center, may apply for membership in the center, provided that such membership application is always subject to approval by the board. Changing the term of the annual general meeting to the annual meeting of members in accordance with the, and sundry spelling and grammatical and stylistic changes made to achieve internal consistency within the bylaw and to harmonize the language of the bylaw with that of the Act where there is no substantive changes. This work has been overseen by the ACE Board and its executive committee through many meetings and reviews over a period of more than 2 years. We are confident that this revised bylaw would achieve full compliance with the Act. And I'm sure everybody understood everything about that. Be it resolved that amendments to bylaw number 1 as circulated this evening and appended to this resolution be hereby approved, and that the revised bylaw number 1 as so amended is hereby ratified and confirmed by the members. Will someone please second the resolution? Thank you, someone.
Someone Jeffrey Ellman seconding the motion.
With consent of the chair, I now open the meeting for discussion of the resolution, if any. Since there are no questions, with consent of the chair, I will now ask for a vote by voting yea or nay by the members of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly who are entitled to vote today. All in favor, please say yea. Those who are not in favor, nay. I hereby declare the resolution carried.
Yes, that was me clapping. It's been a long haul.
I'm going to ask Joanna and Marilyn to come forward, and you can take my seats here and Shelley's seats for the next portions.
You want to watch the ACE meeting?
Okay.
I got the video link to the ACE meeting.
Our 6th item of business is to elect the board of directors for the upcoming year. Yay! We are delighted, of course, that 5 of our directors will be returning, but we also have nominations for the election of 8 new directors. They are ridiculously qualified. I feel like a slob reading their resumes. However, we would like to introduce them to you, and so I call on Marilyn White Campbell and Joanna Taylor to let you know about them. Okay.
Okay, so our next item of business is the motion to elect the board of directors for the upcoming year. I would ask our returning board members who was previously elected to a term that has not yet expired, please raise your hand as your name is called, and that is Simon Jeffrey Ullman. Thank you. Board members previously elected to the term that will expire this annual general meeting and who have accepted nominations to stand for re-election for a 3-year term that will expire at the annual general meeting in 2027. Carol Cohen, Irene Carrier, Matthew Furrow, and Dominica Ozarko.
The following new directors are nominated by the ACE Nominations Committee to be elected for a 3-year term that will expire at the annual general meeting in 2027. Lindsay O'Callaghan. Lindsay O'Callaghan is retired after running a conveyancing business for 30 years. She became interested in the concerns of vulnerable seniors after dealing with an elder abuse issue 20 years ago. Lindsay brings a wealth of experience to the new board. This is her 3rd tenure on the ACE board, and she is a former ACE board chair.
So next is Mark Handelman. Mark Handelman is a lawyer called to the bar in Ontario Bar in 1978. He has expertise in bioethics, holds a Master of Health Science and Bioethics at the University of Toronto Joint Centre for Bioethics. Mark recently retired from the Consent and Capacity Board, where he served 2 terms totaling 15 years duration, during which he was appointed senior lawyer, member, and vice chair. Mark has also been a member of the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal and of the Discipline Committee of the College of Traditional Chinese Medicine Practitioners and Acupuncturists. Mark practices elder law and healthcare law. He has been active in the business community and has previously written some 300 restaurant reviews and food articles for the London Free Press.
Melissa Almala. Melissa is an associate lawyer at Kimmel Law Group, practicing in estate, trust, and capacity litigation. She holds a Juris Doctor degree from Osgoode Hall Law School with a specialization in litigation, dispute resolution, and the administration of justice. Melissa is a lead member in the teaching team for the Lawyer as Negotiator course at Osgoode Hall Law School. She serves as the vice chair of the Women's Legal Education and Action Fund, LEAF, Toronto, and is also a coach for the Law Society of Ontario's Coach and Advisor Network. Melissa is a member of the Advocacy Society Estate Litigation Practice Group and an affiliate member of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, STEP. Melissa sits on executive committees, including STEP Toronto's membership committee, the Baycrest Foundation's Professional Advisory Committee, and the Medical Legal Society of Toronto's Young Practitioners Committee. Melissa holds a Master of Arts from York University and an honor specialization Bachelor of Arts from Western University.
So our next nominee is Lisa Manuel. She is the Director of Clinical Programs for Family Services Toronto, where she has responsibility for a range of programs that offer mental health and gender-based counseling supports to a range of communities, as well as case management supports for children and adults living with a developmental disability. Lisa is a team leader for Toronto's only elder abuse consultation team. This team met for the first time in December of 2001 and continues to this day. She is the founder of Pat's Place, Ontario's first haven for older people experiencing abuse, and authored Family Services Toronto's Best Practice Manual on Abuse of Older Persons. Lisa has presented papers at local, national, and international conferences and has conducted training sessions for the general community on the topic of elder abuse in church basements, community organizations, local libraries, and private businesses. Welcome, Lisa.
Jan Goddard is a lawyer who has been working in the field of elder law in the public sector and private practice for 35 years. Jan served for 10 years as counsel at the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee in Ontario, obtained a certificate in gerontology from Ryerson University and a mediation certificate from Osgoode Hall Law School, and founded and developed the law firm of Goddard Gamage LLP. In 2020, Jan was selected by her peers to receive the Award of Excellence from the Trusts and Estates section of the Ontario Bar Association. She was also chosen as Lawyer of the Year 2020, Trusts and Estates, Toronto by Best Lawyers in Canada. She has been recognized by Best Lawyers annually from 2009 to 2025. The expertise Jan has developed in her chosen field has led her to being a frequent presenter at continuing professional development programs in Ontario, a regular participant in the biannual Canadian Conference on Elder Law, a distinguished fellow of the Canadian Centre of Elder Law, and a sought-after volunteer on committees and advisory groups. In 2015, 16, and 17, Jan co-directed the Elder Law Certificate Program at Osgoode Professional Development. In 2015, 17, and 19, she co-chaired the Canadian Conference on Elder Law in Vancouver. Jan was a member of the advisory group to the Law Commission of Ontario's major project on legal capacity, decision-making, and guardianship. Jan's previous experience working in the government and policy development has helped her develop skills in explaining complicated legal matters to her clients in simple but meaningful language. She now serves as a navigator for her own clients in planning for their futures or trying to resolve messy situations. Jan is a graduate of the University of Toronto Law School and completed her undergraduate degree at Queen's University. She practices under the name Jan Goddard Professional Corporation.
So next we have Lindsay Van Rosendaal. Lindsay Van Rosendaal is the Senior Director of Professional Development at the Ontario Bar Association, OBA, a membership organization representing close to 17,000 lawyers, judges, notaries, law teachers, and law students from across the province. Lindsay was called to the Ontario Bar in 2010 and has practiced family law before joining the OBA in 2010. Since that time, she's focused exclusively on adult learning and education and developing professional development programs for lawyers across various legal areas, including elder law, trusts, and estates law. Welcome.
Kim Zazur Caldwell. Kim Zazur Caldwell is a retired journalist holding a Bachelor of Journalism from Ryerson University in 1983. She worked as a news reporter for the Toronto Star newspaper from 1983 to 1990 and for Toronto Star Media from 2007 to 23. She has also been a freelance writer with CBC Radio, Maclean's Magazine, and Today's Parent Magazine. She is a published author of the books Schoolyard Bully and Good to Go, a practical guide to parenthood. Kim is the winner of more than 20 journalism awards from the Ontario Community Newspaper Association, the Canadian Community Newspaper Association, the local newspaper awards, and other news organizations. Kim came to ACE's attention through her published articles focusing on older adults during the pandemic.
Next is Philippa Getty. Philippa Getty is a supervising counsel of the Disability, Health, and Income Security Division at Downtown Legal Services, the legal clinic operated by University of Toronto's Faculty of Law. After her call to the bar in 2010, she served as counsel for the children's lawyer before moving to private practice at litigation boutique Phillips Gill LLP as a children's lawyer panel agent representing numerous child clients in appeals and their commitment to secure treatment facilities. In 2011, she joined the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee, first as a litigation counsel and then as a client and investigations counsel. As counsel for the public guardian and trustee, Philippa provided a wide range of legal services to Ontarians experiencing cognitive impairment or serious mental health issues, from representation in class actions to a defense against fraud, misappropriation, and medical abuse. And she joined Downtown Legal Services in 2002. At my age, I think I might be needing to connect with you at some point. Are there any other candidates or nominations from the floor for candidates for the election to the ACE Board of Directors? Calling once for additional nominations. Calling twice for additional nominations. Calling 3 times for additional nominations. With the consent of the chair, I declare the nominations closed. I move that the slate presented by the nominations committee as presented this evening be elected as follows. Nominated for a 3-year term ending in 2027, Carol Cohen, Irene Carrier, Matthew Furrow, Domenica Ozarko, Lindsay O'Callaghan, Mark Hendelman, Melissa Elmala. Lisa Manuel, Jan Goddard, Lindsay Van Rosendahl, Kim Zazur Caldwell, Philippa Getty. Will someone please second that motion?
I will second it.
Seconded by Joanna Taylor. With the consent of the chair, I now open the meeting for discussion of motions, if any. With the consent of the chair, I will now ask for a vote voicing yay or nay by the members of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly who are entitled to vote today. All in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
All against, please say nay. I declare this motion carried. And welcome.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Doug.
It's my pleasure to now recognize our retiring board members. I would like to thank all of our retiring board members, each of whom have reached their full 6-year term limits this evening. Our fearless and very dedicated and always good-humored board chair, Shelley Hobbs, our vice chair and previously chair and past chair, Alexander Henderson, with whom I don't know if our meetings would have been as efficient, and Treasurer Tom Warner, who will be deeply missed, and Marilyn White Campbell, whose practical approach to problem solving is also going to be deeply missed, and Joanna Taylor, who brought a wealth of background to this role. Our executive director, Graham Webb, will have some further remarks of thanks and a presentation to each of our retiring board members towards the conclusion of tonight's evening.
I had omitted to highlight certain parts. Here we go. All right. The formal business of the meeting is now over. With the consent of the members present, I call the formal part of the meeting to a close. We will now present video greetings from Attorney General Doug Downey, and I first will present to you Julia Capobianco to make some remarks on behalf of Legal Aid Ontario. Thank you, Julia.
Hi, I'm Doug Downey, Ontario's Attorney General, and I just want to pop in and say congratulations on 40 years at the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly. You're doing so much great work, and it's a time to reflect on where you came from and how Roy McMurtry played a role in that as well. One of his very many accomplishments. So congratulations, merci, and megwich.
Ignore the balloon
I'm
popping.
getting off too much heat here.
Come on up, Julia.
So first I will present to Andrea.
Figure out what you can.
One is good. Thank you. So here is a certificate to celebrate your 40 years of service. I do have a few words written down that I would like to say. So first and foremost, thank you for inviting us to attend your AGM and celebrate this special occasion. On behalf of LAO, I want to extend our heartfelt congratulations on reaching this exceptional milestone. 40 years of service is a remarkable achievement, and it stands as a testament to the dedication, commitment, and strong leadership within your clinic. It's an accomplishment that reflects the hard work, the passion, and the dedication of your entire team, one that you should all take pride in. The work you do in supporting vulnerable elderly individuals is invaluable. It takes incredible compassion and patience, and your efforts have undoubtedly brought comfort and dignity to countless lives. We look forward to continue working with ACE, and we look forward to your continued success in the years ahead. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia, for this presentation. And for the benefit of everyone here tonight, I'd just like to read aloud what this certificate that will go off says. It says 40 years. Legal Aid Ontario extends its appreciation and congratulations to Advocacy Centre for the Elderly for 40 years of service and commitment to the community, November 2024, signed by Steve Pengelly, Chair of Legal Aid Ontario, and Janet Budgell, Acting President and CEO. I might note that Janet at one time was a former staff lawyer at Arch, our sister clinic, and went through the ranks, including being the executive responsible for clinics, and is now the acting CEO upon the recent retirement of David Field. So thank you so much, Julia, and thank you, Shane, also for attending on behalf of LAO this evening. Well, they
Okay.
knocked over. Is that what happened?
I know that.
I thought I just blew them up by body heat because I'm warm. If I may continue then, Shelley, or you need to declare the
Absolutely. I
business-
apparently have run out of
You need to
paper
declare the
here.
business
I
closed.
have no more things to officially say, so I will go off to the corner here and be out the way and leave it over to Graham.
Have you declared the
Oh, yeah,
business
sorry.
closed? I think you have.
I have, yeah. Oh, wait, I have declared it closed. Okay, so we have Julia who has spoken. I will now call on Greg Webb to present the next segment of the meeting.
If no one minds, I'd like to continue through without a break. I'm going to try uncharacteristically to be fairly brief in my comments and give people an early night if I can. Our staff conferenced as to what we should do for our 40th AGM. We often bring in outside speakers. This year, we decided just to focus on ourselves, to meet with our membership and remind our membership of who we are and where we come from. Next slide, please. And so ACE goes back, we were incorporated in 1984, but it was actually 1983 that a community-based movement really instigated by concerned friends of Ontario and long-term care facilities had a concern that there should be an advocacy center for older adults, for the elderly, similar to what was then in place for what is now Arch. Next slide, please. At the time, Roy McMurtry was the MPP for then Eglinton riding, which focused on the young Eglinton area near Eglinton Station. From 1975 to 1985, this was near the end of his term as MPP for that riding. And Roy McMurtry was one of the more distinguished attorney generals of Ontario, up there with Ian Scott and a few others who were really exceptional attorney generals. And when Roy McMurtry was approached by concerned friends and others, including constituents from Eglinton riding, he made sure that the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly was approved and established by what was then the Ontario Legal Aid Plan. By the way, at the time, Arch was then the Advocacy Resource Center for the Handicapped, now the Arch Disability Support Center. And its offices were then on 40 Orchard View Road, which is at the library just behind the Young Eglinton Center. And ACE, if we can go to the next slide, was established, and it had its first office at 40 Holly Street, which is a small office building just around the corner from Eglinton Station. So we were in the same neighborhood as well as in the same, how do you put it, philosophical neighborhood. Our corporation name actually is the Holly Street Advocacy Centre for the Elderly, Inc. That's the name of the corporation. It's always been that, although we're registered as ACE and the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly as business names, and Legal Aid Ontario knows us as ACE. After we eventually ended up at the corner of Yonge and Carleton, Legal Aid Ontario decided to do an audit of the operations of all Ontario legal clinics. This was called the Quality Assurance Program, and it did send some trepidation through the spines of many clinics and executive directors to have external reviewers reading through our files and our policy documents and our records to see if we were all up to snuff. And then they announced that they would do this in alphabetical order. So I immediately reminded our founder, executive director, Judith Wall, that we are actually the Holly Street Advocacy Center for the Elderly, Inc., and we should be with the H's rather than the A's. And I suggested that we might change our name to the Yonge Street Advocacy Center for the Elderly, hoping that they did not go in reverse chronological order. But that's who we are. And our stay at 40 Holly Street didn't last long. I think I wasn't there, but I think it lasted about 2, maybe 3 years. And by 1987, it moved a little bit more around the corner to 120 Eglinton Avenue East, and its staff had expanded from 2 lawyers and an office manager to 5 lawyers, including the executive director, an office manager, and 2 support staff who are intake workers. And there's some photographs of us. You can see the old computer screens here. This is before my day, but here's Judith and many of the staff that so many of us will recognize. And this young woman here and down here was the very young Rita Krlavicius. Rita is with us tonight. She's right behind you. And Rita has been with us since 1989. She's our longest serving staff member. Next slide, please. When we get to the end of the meeting, we're going to hear a little more about one of our retiring board members, Alexander Henderson. But around 1996, 1997, our lease was coming up for renewal at 120 Eglinton Avenue East, and we began to look for offices. And one of our young board members, Mr. Henderson, had offices at 2 Carleton Street on the 18th floor, the penthouse suite. And as it turned out, they had space available. And through some connections we had on our board, we were able to obtain favorable leasing space. And we moved to 2 Carleton Street over College Station, where we stayed for some 26 years until 2023. And quite frankly, our rent was very good there. The landlord was excellent. The space was fine. And we would probably still be there today were it not for the revised zoning bylaw that caused all of the property owners up and down Yonge Street in that area of town to apply for a new site development approval agreement. I forget the exact wording, but approval of a new development before they implemented a 4-foot setback from the sidewalk so that you could build right to the sidewalk if you had your development plan approved, and they got approval for a 72-story building. And eventually our lease was no longer secure because although we had a good lease, it also had a 1-year escape clause, which caused me countless nights looking at the ceiling wondering what would happen if our landlord decided to terminate our lease on 1 year's notice. During this 26 years at 2 Carlton Street, for many of those years, we had very little staff change. We went over 10 years without a single staff change, and then some by retirements, and some staff members retired or passed away. And also during that time, 26 years, the number of staff that we were funded for changed from 8 to 9. We started with 5 lawyers and 3 support staff. We ended up with 6 lawyers and 3 support staff. And by some good management by our board, we were able to sneak under the wire a 4th person who's funded, another licensed paralegal. So we went from 8 to 10 over 26 years. And also during that time, our intake workers, our support staff, as time went by, were replaced with licensed paralegals rather than less qualified support staff. But the less qualified support staff were very skilled at what they did, and they were excellent at their jobs. Next slide, please. So here we are now. In June 2023, Legal Aid Ontario had vacant space in the building we're at now. They urged us, if it were possible, to take that space off their hands. They provided amazing cooperation and assistance in building out the new space that's just down the hall in this building. And at the expiry of our lease, we were able to move into the space we have now over the end of May 2023, taking actual occupancy in June. We are co-located here with 8 other specialty community legal clinics. The HALCO, the HIV and AIDS Legal Clinic, is down the hall. ACTO, the Advocacy Centre for Tenants in Ontario, and ISAC, the Income Security Advocacy Centre for the Centre, are across the hall, as is the Canadian Environmental Law Association. And our next door neighbor is ACLCO, the Association of Community Legal Clinics of Ontario, who happily participate in the what is now used to be the ACE annual hockey pool and is now the co-op hockey pool. They won it last year, and they're being taken to the cleaners by Kimberly and I this year. And above, on the next floor up, we have some other clinics. I'll spare you the details, but we're surrounded by our clinic colleagues. This is a photograph from the holiday Christmas social celebration last year. They hadn't had one for many years until ACE arrived on the scene. And Kimberly Wargala said, why don't we have a Christmas party? And so Kimberly organized a Christmas party in this room. And this is our team after we won the trivia contest. And we all have little trophies, some of which are in the other room. And when we say we're an active member of the co-op, I'm on the board. The co-op is a separate corporation. It's a not-for-profit corporation. It's not a charity, but it has a board of directors with 1 representative from each clinic. I'm on the board for our clinic, and we all have to take responsibilities. This year, it turns out, I'm the treasurer for the clinic, which is a thankless position, to say the least. We can ask Tom and Matthew about that. So we're actively involved in this. Next slide, please. Turning to what we do, our clinic has a mission statement, and this is our mission statement. We're committed to upholding the rights of low-income seniors. Our purpose is to improve the quality of life of seniors by providing legal services, which include direct client assistance, public legal education, law reform, community development, and community organizing. And here's a picture of Judith Wall, who is doing abuse of an older adult. What is it? I can't tell you how many community legal education sessions Judith Wall has done to every type of audience throughout Ontario. And there's our former intake worker, Tammy Gillard, at the desk where we were attending at a seniors fair. I think Kimberly has put this picture up because I've said we don't have time to attend at seniors fairs where we're not presenting. And I think Kimberly is subtly reminding me that we once did this. Next slide, please. Thank you, Kimberly. here's some of the things that we do. Our direct client services include summary advice to low-income seniors on age-related issues. And here, when someone calls, we keep records in a computer database of who's calling and who they're calling about. And when someone calls, the first thing we want to know is, who are you calling about? Because in private practice, when I came here after 10 years in private practice and I pick up the phone, my instinct is that the person I'm speaking to on the phone is my potential client. But I remember vividly my first phone call as a staff litigation lawyer at ACE on Eglinton Avenue. And my first call I receive, I ask, who are you calling about? And I recognize there's an inherent conflict of interest because my caller is calling about someone other than themselves. And throughout our conversation, we cannot say or do anything that would compromise our ability to give legal advice to the older adult whose rights are an issue. So, for example, if Shane were calling about his mother, complaining that his mother is giving all, that his brother is taking all his mother's money and she won't do anything about it, I'm not able to give Shane advice because the next call I get might be from Shane's mother saying, Mr. Webb, my son is trying to interfere in my finances. What can I do to stop him from interfering in my finances? And I've already given Shane advice. I have a conflict. And so we reserve opinion advice in most cases. There are exceptions to the older adult whose rights are an issue. I'll tell you the exception in a minute. Oh, I'm off camera. Am I good now? I can read better from over there. I'm okay here? Okay, good. There are situations where we can't give summary telephone advice. One is that it's not the older adult whose rights are an issue, and I wish I had to make these up. But for example, one type of call that we might receive and we have received is, my brother is 68 years old. He has a developmental disability. He's lived with my parents in Peterborough in their home, their 4-bedroom, 2-story home, until my father died 15 years ago, and my mother passed away a year and a half ago, and my brother is now living there alone. Since my mother died, my brother is now frequenting bars that have strip clubs in Peterborough. He's bringing the dancers home to live with him at the house. They're sunbathing with nothing or next to nothing on in the backyard. We think they're taking all his money and the neighbors are complaining. I don't think my brother is mentally capable. What can I do to help him? Well, that's actually, you know, the circumstances are on a scale of 10, like a 6 out of 10, but the basic problem is very similar. I want to help somebody. And even though the story is heart-wrenching, we can't give that caller advice on how she might apply for guardianship. But what we do is give general legal information that might resemble legal advice without the opinion, explaining how the law of adult guardianship in Ontario works and referring them to the private bar for advice on whether they might or might not want to bring an application for guardianship of their brother, or to report the matter to the guardianship investigations unit of the public guardian and trustee, or what other steps might be taken. But we don't give advice, but give summary, general legal information. Another situation where we can't give opinion advice is where it's outside of our area of expertise. Let's say math. Shane, sorry to pick on you tonight, but you're right here in the front row. That's what you get for sitting at the front. Let's say Shane's mother calls me and she wants legal advice on what to do with her formerly RRSP, now her, or what do they call those things? Sorry? Yeah, her investment. Yeah, RIF. And so we're not going to be able to give Shane's mother advice on her RIF for 2 reasons. Number one, even though I have a master's degree in tax law, I've never practiced it, and it's outside our area of practice. We just don't have expertise, so we can't give advice on things that are outside our area of expertise or practice. For instance, real estate law, and we have to refer her to someone who can give her capable advice. So she would go to the private bar. And the third thing we do is, aside from giving like summary telephone advice, we actually give direct client representation. Representation is different from advice. When we're speaking to a third party on behalf of a client, we are now retained and engaged. And so in a limited number of cases, we act as their lawyer in dealing with third parties that may include litigation. Unexpectedly, the higher our volumes are of call volumes, the lower the number of direct representation cases we can give. Because in 1995, when Jane Meadis and I joined ACE, and I don't know what it was in 1989 when Rita joined, we used to get about 1,700 calls a year. And the last I knew, we were getting like 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 calls a year, but we only have one more staff member. Plus, our record keeping requirements are more difficult, and each case is bigger. And so the volume of calls we get, the more time we spend on intake, the less time we have available to give direct client representation. And as with so many other agencies, we're trying to figure out how to do more with less, or actually more with the same thing, and to expand the footprint of the clinic. And that's one of the things that we're constantly working on. Next slide, please. So our hours during the pandemic, in March 2020, I remember the day we sent everybody home. And we said we're working remotely. And we were not at all prepared for remote work. It was of necessity. And we worked from home remotely for the better part of 3 years. In 2023, we had 3 things happen all at once. One is we moved our offices, which was a humongous undertaking. We had been slowly coming back to work on site, but we really got back to work on site for most staff members 3 days per week. And we also launched our new website. Thank you to Kimberly Wargala, without whom that would not have happened. They didn't teach me in law school in 1980 to 83 how to construct a website, and honestly, I don't think I'll ever get it. But those all happened at once. And so now we're here 5 days a week, but it's not always the same people. Sometimes staffing is an issue. Sometimes we might have a skeleton staff. On Friday, you might find Rita and Heather here, or Rita and Angie here. And on Wednesday, you might find like the whole family. But we keep the doors open 5 days a week. And I'd especially like to thank our staff for doing that. Angeline Douglas is in the corner there. She is one of our main case workers. She's been on the intake line for how many years, Angie? 11 years? 10 years. She comes in from Peel Region and holds the fort. And we have other workers too who do that. They work tremendously hard, and we're here. We feel that we are reasonably on top of our clients' our needs because of the unfiltered intake we receive. There's no filter of what comes over the phone. It's everything from, my neighbor's tree is shedding too many leaves on the lawn and the city bylaw officer won't do anything about it. What can I do? To, my father has been charged with sexual assault in a long-term care home, even though he lacks mental capacity, and he's been released on a form of release that he's not allowed to attend the long-term care home, and he can't find other accommodation. So it's just a wide range of things. And as we listen to our callers' problems, we try to provide access to justice, and we're constantly thinking about the triage of what can we do and where can we do it. Some of the areas that we practice are durable. They've always been here. Financial elder abuse has always been here, whether it's a gift loan case, I loaned my son money. He hasn't paid it back, but now he says it was a gift, or power of attorney abuse. That happens all the time. Other things are emergent, such as we hadn't really contemplated mortgage fraud until after the pandemic started. The door-to-door sales we used to get when I joined ACE were vacuum cleaner salesmen that if you were a vacuum cleaner salesman who was trying to take advantage of an older adult, you did not want Rita Korlavichus coming after you. But the vacuum cleaners were replaced by furnaces, air conditioners, and now new roofs and mortgages on your house that put people at risk of eviction from their own home for non-payment of a fraudulent or oppressive mortgage debt. And so our areas of practice are always driven by our clients' ever-changing community needs. Next slide, please. So here are our staff. I think we've listed them already. Myself, Rita, who joined us in 1989. Jane Meadis, who's not here tonight. She had other commitments. Joined us in 1995, a few months after myself. Alyssa Lane, who was our second institutional advocate, is on maternity leave right now. We're grateful that our lawyers and paralegals and support staff, we encourage people to have good outside lives. We encourage people to have families and to have a life balance. Bethany Pascudo, who's not here tonight, she's our, really, I would say, Rita, between yourself and me and Sarah, who's no longer here. Bethany is really carrying the bulk of our litigation. Would you agree? I don't think it's audible, but Rita's giving Bethany her seal of approval, which she deserves. Bethany, today is Bethany's husband's birthday, which we overrode, and he's also a drug prosecutor in the middle of a drug trial, and so she's not able to be here tonight. Iris Salimi, Iris, where are you? There's Iris at the back. Iris is on contract with us. She's a very highly qualified lawyer, and she is working with Jane as an institutional advocate, filling in for Alyssa. Angie in the back, I've already mentioned. Angie, I've always said, keeps the trains running on time. When I was a staff litigation lawyer, I relied on Angie so many times, who would bail me out so often, and is extremely reliable and hardworking. Heather Jonason, our administrative coordinator, is a certified law clerk. Heather, put your hand up. So Heather's father was a lawyer with a real estate and wills and estates practice, and Heather kind of grew up in that and worked in that, and she's a law clerk who has worked in private practice. She's been here with us now, and we so appreciate Heather, who is trustworthy and reliable and conscientious and all those good things, and does a fabulous job. Kimberly Wargala, who's a licensed, I skipped someone. Where's Jocelyn? Jocelyn is not here tonight. She's another licensed paralegal who works along with Angie. Jocelyn's mother is one of the longest standing executive directors of a legal clinic. She's the executive director of the Don Valley Community Legal Clinic, and she is a contemporary of Judith Walls, a friend of Judith's forever. And Kimberly Wargala, who's here tonight, and Kimberly is our jack of all trades, who does everything. She's a licensed paralegal. She also has technical skills. She took this PowerPoint from a black and white outline to doing what we're doing, and she she does all kinds of stuff. And she's also what I would call how they have armed forces brats? Well, I would call Kimberly and Jocelyn clinic brats. Her mother was the long-standing executive director of the Lake Country Community Legal Clinic, and Kimberly would always be hanging around the clinic and working in the clinic, and seems to know everything about clinics. So we have a very talented and dedicated staff. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for the trustworthiness. The trustworthiness is really the main thing. The hard work and the dedication, the talent of all of our staff. We work as a team, and we couldn't do it if we weren't doing it together. Next slide, please. So here's, people say, Well, what do? You don't do mortgages on real estate? You don't draw wills and powers of attorney? What do you do? Well, these are some of the things that we do. It's not exhaustive, but whatever we do, it's really driven by two considerations. One is the influence of advanced age on legal issues. So we're looking for elder law issues, and the other is access to justice. We're not here to cut the private bar's grass. If there's somebody else who can do it, we're going to refer it out. And sometimes we go to extraordinary lengths to find representation elsewhere, because everything we take in now, we have to set something else aside. We just are at full capacity. Here's some of the issues we involve: consent capacity and substitute decision-making, healthcare decision-making, and so on. Powers of attorney and adult guardianship law, which may involve power of attorney abuse, and adult guardianship applications. We don't bring them, but we'll often act as appointed counsel for the allegedly incapable person, where the public guardian trustee is directed to find counsel, and we're sometimes the counsel appointed. Long-term care homes and hospital discharges should be in big letters, because Jane and Alyssa and Iris, this is the main substance of all their work, of dealing with complaints about the care in long-term care homes and inappropriate discharges from hospitals, not just to the wrong long-term care home, but to other destinations. Retirement home issues about charging and care issues. Home care, dealing with that today. Quality of care, discontinuance of care, and so on. Health law, sometimes complaints against regulated health practitioners, including physicians, nurses, other health practitioners. Elder abuse of all kinds, including primarily financial abuse, which is the most commonly reported of abuse, but also other forms of abuse, including physical abuse and sexual abuse that ends in criminal charges. For example, we had a client, we've had more than one client. I can think of 3 off the top of my head, who were 2 were women and 1 were men, who were sexually assaulted by staff in a long-term care home, and criminal charges laid. We would give victim witness representation on occasion. Consumer law actually should be in big letters. We are doing no end of consumer law that ends up now in mortgage fraud and other forms of consumer abuse. And income security programs, dealing with federal programs, old age security, pension, Canada, the guaranteed income supplement, the Canada Pension Plan retirement and death benefits. Rita Korlavicius is a bit of an expert on that, and she gives educational sessions to other clinics on occasion, and you'll be called upon to do so soon to another clinic in Ottawa within the coming weeks. This is Jane with Justice Thomas Cromwell of the formerly on the Supreme Court of Canada at one of the elder law conferences she attended. Next slide, please. Here's some of the types of things we've done over the years. This is not this year or last year. This is like from the Grenadier was in progress when I joined the clinic. It was a test case. The Grenadier up here was a retirement home that challenged whether care home legislation under what's now the Residential Tenancies Act applied it to this type of retirement home. They said, this just doesn't apply to us. So ACE commenced litigation, and it was established that the care home provisions of the now the Residential Tenancies Act do apply to what's now retirement homes. We've done 3 inquests over the years. In 1996, the early 2000s, and about 2012 into death by fire in retirement homes and long-term care homes. To give you the length of our work, the Meadowcroft Place retirement home was a modern single-story retirement home in Mississauga that had a fire in which eventually 9 residents passed away immediately, and later 11 altogether from complications. There was a 72-day coroner's inquest in Mississauga. At the time, it was the longest coroner's inquest ever in Ontario. That was directed to find recommendations recommending that all Ontario retirement homes, well, they weren't called retirement homes and they were care homes, be retrofitted with sprinklers. This was the recommendation, was supported by the Office of the Fire Marshal. That inquest went in 1995 and 1996. We represented the Alzheimer Association of Ontario, and we got the verdict we wished. And the next year, we sat as a member of the Ontario Fire Marshal's Technical Advisory Committee for the revision of the fire code. And the Technical Advisory Committee recommended retrofitting of fire sprinklers around 1997 in retirement homes. Then there was an election. And despite the recommendation of the coroner's jury, and despite the advice of the Technical Advisory Committee, the government mandated sprinklers in all new homes, but refused to retrofit. And we continued to have fires. Spencer House, we had a fire where we represented concerned friends when an elderly man burned to death in his wheelchair in an unsprinkled retirement home / long-term care home. They set the heat of his body set off the heat. It didn't have a smoke detector. It had a heat detector. He was financially incapable, identified as dangerous smoker, and left alone in an 8th floor smoking room after lunch. His smoking materials fell onto his lap, ignited his clothing, and then ignited his body. And when his body reached enough heat to set out the heat alarm above him, the elevators shut down. The staff came up the stairs running and heroically tried to put out the fire, which they couldn't do. He was brought to Sunnybrook Hospital, where he was given massive doses of morphine until he passed away a few hours later. We did that, and I sat back in like the 2nd or 3rd row, hoping that nobody would notice when I had my afternoon nap after lunch. But the coroner insisted I sit in the front row because we were the closest thing to the representative of the deceased. And Exhibit 2 was his burned out wheelchair, which was placed right where I am now in relation to Shane for 6 weeks of the inquest, which resulted in more recommendations, including sprinklers. And then in 2012, the Muskoka Heights retirement home in Orillia burned to the ground, taking the lives of yet more residents, and yet another recommendation for sprinklers. And then another technical advisory committee for the revision of the fire code, and another recommendation of sprinklers. And we had to arm wrestle the owners and operators of retirement homes, who were then represented by the Ontario Residential Care Association. They were in the Meadowcroft inquest too, and with the fire chiefs refereeing the match as to getting mandatory sprinklers, which eventually came about in 2025. No, sorry. 20 what? 2019. It seems like 2025. So in 1995, I brought my grade 9 and 10 sons in high school to take your kids to work day with me during the 72-day Muskoka Heights Meadowcroft Place retirement inquest, when sprinklers were front and center. And in 2019, when sprinklers were finally mandated, my eldest son was a professional engineer working for Hydro One, and my second son was a manager with the Department of Defense running their publications depot. That's how much time it took. That's the breadth of our work. And people come to us and they hope that something can happen, that this will never happen again for anybody else, and there's going to be a change by Christmas. And we know that this is a long game. It's one inch by inch and yard by yard, and it can be frustrating, but gains are made, and we just want to make sure that we're always trying to move in the right direction. Let's see, the El Ruby and Lopez coroner's inquest. This is where a Arabic man who spoke no English, was so severely demented that his family kept him in the garage of their home because they couldn't govern him, had him admitted to long-term care in an Italian-speaking facility where there were no Arabic speakers, and he didn't know where he was. He was admitted on a Friday afternoon, and by Saturday morning, he, being demented, not knowing his location, being upset and terrified, and had violent tendencies, had murdered 2 other residents, for which he was not criminally responsible. And the outcome of that inquest was a strong recommendation from that jury that there should be enough behavioral support units throughout Ontario to provide one for everyone who needs them, one when they need it. And the situation now is we have fewer behavioral support units which provide care for violent, cognitively impaired long-term care home residents than we did then. Because, you know, dementia is not a criminal issue, it's a health issue. And so often we find that the criminal justice system has to pick up where the health system fails people because they're treated not as a health problem, but as a criminal system. We intervened in the Supreme Court of Canada in a Nova Scotia case, re JJ, which dealt with the Adult Protection Act in Nova Scotia, locking up vulnerable adults for indefinite periods of time under adult quote protection close quote legislation because the Mental Health Act wasn't strong enough to do that. And we intervened in a case called Cuthbertson and Rasuli, which dealt with the involuntary withdrawal of life-sustaining treatment when someone is in a persistent vegetative state or something like that. Can the physicians, Kimberly tells me I failed in my attempt to be brief, withdraw life-sustaining treatment without informed consent. And right now, we have the Bill 7 Charter Challenge pending before the Superior Court challenging this act, which would allow the involuntary admission of hospital patients to long-term care homes not of their choosing. So we think we're doing important work. We think we're doing groundbreaking work. But honestly, the biggest cases are not always the most important cases to us. Because every day that we come into work, every one of our staff, including myself, have the opportunity to do something to make someone else's life a little bit better. And my favorite example of this is when I joined ACE, Rita will remember this, in 1995. I joined in May, and in the late summer, I had a client who was a very elegant older woman in her 80s. She had worked at Eaton's as a model, a catalog model, until she aged out of that profession, and they put her in like the billings department. And she had been long widowed, had one son who had a problem. He had a messy divorce, a problem with his job. He was penniless, in debt. And so she borrowed she borrowed every cent she could borrow to help her son out. And then he did something awful. He died. He had a heart attack in his 40s and he passed away, and she had to bury her only son. But she was also left with all this credit card debt. And so as a staff litigation lawyer, I wrote to all of her creditors, explained the situation, and asked them to forgive the debt. And every one of her creditors positively forgave the debt, except for one who promised not to pursue it. And after that, all of the other staff members of ACE put letters on my desk saying, "Dear Mr. Webb, my visa bill is way too high." And every year at Thanksgiving, for many years after, I received a very nice note written in the beautiful handwriting of this older woman, thanking us, ACE, for having helped her get out of that debt situation, which deeply troubled her. And that wasn't a big case. It wasn't a groundbreaking case, but it was an important case that made a change in someone's life. And those are cases that we run across all the time. New slide, please. Okay. I'm going to skip over. Oh, geez. I'm going to skip over this because we're going on too long. Just to say that we have had a very distinguished career, especially through Judith and Jane, but we've done a lot of things. We did 3 editions of the long-term care facilities in Ontario, the Advocates Manual. At the time, there was no handbook for long-term care facilities. ACE wrote it and revised it twice. All of the long-term care homes and the Ministry of Health bought it. And when we had disputes with them, they would read back to us from our own manual. In fact, in one of the inquests I did, one of the expert witnesses was quoting from our own manual. I had to cross-examine the witness on our manual, which I co-authored. Judith and Jane have won a lot of awards. And recently, just last week, the Department of Justice Canada published online on their site a paper that we wrote under really it was Kimberly Wargala was the main researcher in writing. The paper is called A Qualitative Look at Serious Legal Problems for Older Adults in Ontario. After we wrote it, it's been translated into both languages, published online. And if I may say, we've given our financial statements. Part of that is the Department of Justice paid us $40,000 to do that. We had some expenses with it and a lot of staff time, but it was time well spent. Next slide, please. So I think I've talked about the type of things we're doing. I'm going to skip on to the next slide. ACE, past, present, and future. In a nutshell, the population of older adults in the Greater Toronto Area and in Ontario is growing really fast. And our staff resources aren't growing at all. I get requests frequently, Graham, we need more staff. And we do need more staff, but we also need to find ways to get more staff. And so we need to find ways to just meet that increasing client demand with the staff that we have and the resources we can pull together. We also are getting more and more public legal education and more sophisticated ones. For example, one of the sessions I've been called on to do recently has to do with mental capacity for consent to sexual intimacy by persons living with dementia in congregate living facilities. And this is something that, honestly felt completely unqualified to present on, but prepared and presented. It was well received. And then once you do it, you get called to do it again and again, right? And so it's not just the power of attorney workshops, it's more and more requests and more complex requests. We're needing to produce new educational materials on an ongoing basis. We're behind in that. Our staff have been working on stuff, but it's in bottlenecks somewhere. I think it's on the executive director's desk. I'll have to ask about that. And we also need to find also new and additional ways to engage our community on what their needs are on new and emergent issues. Next slide, please. I can't skip over this. Judith Wall was our founding executive director. She was hired in 1983 away from private practice at Birnbaum Steinberg Kaufman. She was really our leader. And she was not just our leader, she was the leader of elder law in Canada throughout her lifetime. New slide, please. So when Judith took over ACE in 1983, she had just come from private practice. And I didn't know her then, but I've seen her in a video. There was a video, Mr. Nobody, by the National Film Board, which showed Judith. And at the time, Judith was this diminutive, slender little woman who looked very younger than her stated age. In fact, geez, I shouldn't share this, but when Judith was in private practice, her law firm represented a hotel that employed exotic dancers, and they nearly lost their license. And to keep the license, they had to keep the hotel in operation. So they had to run the hotel for the owner as their lawyers, run the hotel for them and the lawyers. And Judith tells of the time that when some of the dancers got arrested for something other, and she appeared in Old City Hall Court wearing in the 1970s what was then quite appropriate, like a short black dress, and she was appearing as counsel in the dungeon type courtroom, and the court officers started snapping at her to get in line with the other accused because they thought she was one of the accused, not the lawyer. And I can't overstate the amount of sexism that was directed towards women lawyers in that day. It was really awful. Also, elder law, pardon me? Judith took no prisoners. You didn't have to wait too long to wonder what was on Judith's mind. And and not only like her gender, but also the type of law, because older estates and trust practitioners really didn't. Some of them really didn't appreciate elder law. What's that? They thought it was like law practiced by older lawyers, and so Judith fought to establish elder law as a distinct area of law where the focus was on the older adult, not the persons around the older adult. New slide, please. And some of the things that Judith did, well, I'm going to leave this just to say that if it was to do with elder law and it was important, Judith was right in the middle of it. There's no other way about it. Next slide, please. And she taught everywhere at universities, law programs, church basements, you name it. Next slide, please. And she won many, many, many awards, including at the bottom of the list, the Ontario Bar Association for Excellence in Elder Law, which I'm very proud to say our new board member, Jan Goddard, was one of her nominators. And Judith was given this award on the day before she passed away. The next slide, please. And so finally, we're coming at the end, thankfully, but we have a volunteer board of directors, now a minimum of 8, a maximum of 15, the majority of whom are over 55 years of age. We've had an excellent board. We have an excellent board coming in. The board meets monthly. Usually we skip one meeting in the summer, so usually 11 months a year. And we have a very dedicated board. I can't say enough about our board. Next slide, please. As you know, our returning board members, Irene, Simon, Dom, Carol, and Matthew, and along with our retiring board members, all of these board members have been on for their full terms. They almost never miss a meeting. I've been executive director since October 2016. We've never had a board meeting where we haven't had a quorum, and we rarely have a board meeting where there is even 1 or 2 members absent. If they are, it's because they're with family in California for an operation or something really important. They are dedicated. Next slide, please. We have these new board members coming on board, and you've heard their biographies. In reading and editing their biographies, I am actually stunned to look at them. And someone has said to me, boy, I don't know if I'd be able to get on the board with this group of people. They're amazingly talented group of people, each and every one of them. Thank you all for joining our board. But here's where I want to come to. Next slide, please. Our retiring board members. And if I could ask each of these people to come forward, and ask you to come all forward all at once, because I was going to do one at a time, but I'm taking all too long. So if I could ask Joanna, Marilyn, Tom, Shelley, and Alex, please come forward. We have a small presentation we'd like to give you. Each of these board members have come to they've served a full 6 years. I looked today through the minutes of our 2018 annual general meeting when they were elected, and these were the 5 directors elected in November 2018, and they're the 5 directors retiring because they reached their term limit in 2024. And this is kind of like the Oscars, because these are the Oscar, in my view, these are Oscar-winning board members. And so we have something for each person. If I could give this to Marilyn, and I need 3 hands. Marilyn, this is a box containing an award for you. And if I can read off of it, it says ACE, Certificate of Appreciation, Marilyn White Campbell, in recognition and appreciation of your 6 years of commitment and dedicated service as a member of the Board of Directors of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly, Toronto, November 2024. I'd like to go on more about Marilyn and each of these board members, but I think I'm running out of time. If it gets safe to say, Marilyn, thank you for all of your expertise. You've always jumped in and given us your good opinions. You've been wonderful to work with, and you've been so dedicated, and thank you. We'll miss you.
Thank you.
And we have a box for Joanna, which says the same thing. Joanna Taylor, the same wording in recognition of your 6 years of commitment as a member of the Board of Directors. You also have been wonderful to work with. I actually, I learned so much from the people who I deal with, whether it's the clients, the other lawyers, the lawyers on the other side, and our board members like Marilyn. Marilyn is a former professor of nursing. Sorry?
That's right.
Sorry?
I am.
I was.
Yeah, you were, yeah. And occasionally she lets things slip out that I would never have thought of, she tells us. And Marilyn is also a very strong advocate for the rights of residents of retirement homes. She's been very concerned about certain retirement home issues, and on her own accord, in her personal capacity, she's taken it upon herself to seek meetings with the executive of the Retirement Home Regulatory Authority to try to address certain issues. And thank you for your advice and advocacy. Okay. Next for Tom, if you would. This is for Tom Warner. In recognition and appreciation of your 6 years of commitment and dedicated service as a treasurer. We were trying to figure how we could keep Tom on as a treasurer, but it won't work. And a member of the Board of Directors for the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly. Tom, you've been a wonderful treasurer, been a great committed board member, a representative of diverse communities, and thank you so much for everything. And Tom, one other thing, and for Shelley, if you would, and Tom is one of those people who does things right away. He has to do things like approve financial statements for a presentation to the board and sign checks. And despite what else might be going on in Tom's life, he's down here to sign checks, to do whatever we need as NASTF and without complaint. For Shelley, in recognition and appreciation of your 6 years of commitment and dedicated service as a chair and member of the Board of Directors. Shelley is one of those people who worked as a lawyer with the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee, and in my experience in litigating in cases, we were on the same case, her for the PGT and me for someone else. Shelley was always a star and always extremely rights-oriented for the rights of the older adult, the incapable person, and she's carried that through 6 years of board membership. And I can't tell you how supportive Shelley has been of me in my role as executive director, where I've needed advice. Being the board chair has that burden of not so much busy activity, but thoughtful activity, where I would have a dilemma, and the board chair is my confidant with things that I can't really share with staff and don't want to go to the whole board, but call the board chair to say, I need to give you a heads up and I need to ask you about that. And Shelley has so often encouraged me for places where I really couldn't figure out how to navigate. And I'm so grateful for the constant support and dedication you've given us. Thank you, Shelley. We'll miss you. Now, I've left Alex to last because I've done this before. I'll read this one to Alex. It says, Alexander Henderson, in recognition and appreciation of your many years of commitment and dedicated service as a chair, past chair, and member of the Board of Directors of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly. He's actually retiring as the vice chair. But I had to say many years because we've actually lost track of how many years that Alex has been on the board. I can't figure it out. I've read through the board meetings.
I don't remember.
It's about
It's about 22.
He says about 22 years. All I know is when I got hired as a 35-year-old staff lawyer in 1995, Alex was already on the board of directors then, and he's just retiring for the third time now. And Alex as well has been, like Shelley, one of those stalwarts, a former board chair who was your confidant, who's expressed support for all of the clinic, including myself in some difficult management roles. And Alex has also been in a certain cases the fixer. There are situations where it's impossible for one person, myself, to be to play more than one role. And so Alex has been able to step in and manage a situation which is beyond my means without pulling myself apart in different directions. And also Alex has guided us through, not just in this term, but in previous terms as well, conflicts within the board, conflicts with Legal Aid Ontario, all kinds of different conflicts. Alex has seen it all, done it all, and we're so grateful that Alex has been with us, and we also will miss you. I hope that sometime you'll get down here to have lunch. Thank you, Alex. I'm going to turn it over. The hour is late, but are there anyone here who would like to say something? Any of our retiring directors would like to say a word or two?
Just a couple of words. What a great experience it's been for me to be part of ACE. I've learned so much about what ACE does for the older adult. And being an older adult, I really appreciate the care that goes into that. And so thank you, particularly you, Graham, for the leadership, because you are special. You work so hard. You are an advocate. Fantastic. So thank you, and it's been such a privilege.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joanna, for those kind words.
This is for the new board members. You will note Graham has his own definition of the word brief.
They always make me talk last. If there's nothing else, then I think that concludes our annual meeting of members. I'm going to ask all the board members, new and old, to stay behind for to say hello. And the new board members need to have a very brief business meeting to do two items, which is to elect our officers for the coming year and to decide the date of our next board meeting. So I could say thank you and good night to everyone. Thank you to new people who have come. I hope we all become members if you aren't already. Thank you to Julia and Shane, and it's so good to see you. Hope to see you next year.